I know we've already compared the Mahindra XUV and the Tata Nexon before, but no, this is not you having deja vu. The last time Sirish was hosting and we had the diesels on test. Today, we've got the petrols. Come on Delhi, give us some love. This one is for you. We're going to be telling you what's to love and what's not to love about these two SUVs, but we're going to be focusing specifically on the petrol engines. If you want a more holistic comparison test where we talk about styling, about features, about interiors, about space, all of that stuff, we've already done a video. You should see the link up here on your screen right now, and it's also placed in the video description below. So make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Evo India channel, and let's start by answering the most important question first. Which of these two is the faster one? Okay, I'm in the Mahindra XUV and I'm here because it's the newer car, but also because it's probably the faster car. It makes more power, 129 bhp to 118 bhp in the Nexon, 230 Nm with 250 on overboost compared to 170 on the Nexon. So theoretically, this should be faster, but let's put it to the test. And we immediately have a lead. The Nexon is left fairly far behind and I'm pulling on him. We're just getting further and further and further away as we get to the finish. And that's time. And of course, the XUV is quicker. Okay, so drag race in the bag for the Mahindra XUV, and now let's get down to business. Like I said, output's really impressive. 129 bhp, 230 Nm, these are best in class figures. And honestly, it shows in the performance that this car has. It does feel best in class. When you drive it around, you get this strong surge of acceleration. And right now, I'm in zap mode. It's got these silly modes, zip, zap and zoom. They're silly names, but the modes work well. So you go into the drive modes, you put into zoom, go in zoom, and you get just a little bit more punchiness from the engine. But even in zap, even in the normal mode, I'm just going to call them normal modes. Even in the normal modes, it is plenty punchy and you can drive it really quick without trouble. We were driving on the way to our shoot location and I had a great time hustling this XUV. It can really sit at high speeds very easily. Getting up to 100, 120 is no stress at all. And you get there very quickly, you get there very effortlessly. And this is really good performance for such a small engine. What I also like is that lag is reasonably well contained. You don't have the effect of so much lag. I remember when I drove the diesel XUV, that lag was very pronounced, but that's not so pronounced in this turbo petrol. It really is a nice motor. I think one of the standout elements of this drivetrain is the refinement. The NVH levels are very, very good considering this is a 3-cylinder motor, considering it has that inherent gruffness to it. But the way Mahindra has gone about dampening this insides of this car to keep it quiet is really good. Mahindra claims that the XUV's NVH levels are on par with the XUV 700. And honestly, from sitting in here, I can say that that's possibly true. Obviously, I have to drive them back to back to confirm, but it is very quiet in here. And especially compared to the Tata, it is really, really quiet in here. Something else that's updated for this facelift is the 6-speed automatic. This is an Aisin-sourced 6-speed automatic, and now it's in its Gen 3 form. It gets a couple of updates for NVH, for fuel economy, but what I like most is how drivable it makes the car. It just knows what you want. It doesn't hesitate to give you downshifts. You know, you depress the throttle, say 40-50%, and you very willingly get a downshift At lower speeds, it's super smooth, the shift quality is really good. It is a torque converter, so that oiliness, that creaminess that comes with the shifts in such a gearbox is very much there. And it feels really nice to use. It does not have paddles. That is something that the Tata does get, but the Mahindra misses out on. What you can do is shift this like a Tiptronic and move it up and down to shift manually. But honestly, I didn't really feel the need to shift manually in this gearbox because it's fairly on the ball. It knows what you want, it gives you what you want. And combined with that torque, that wave of torque from the engine, which is available quite low down, 1500 RPM is where peak torque starts, you really don't need to be shifting gears too much. So what you've got essentially between this engine and this transmission is a very well sorted drivetrain that is enjoyable to drive, that is smooth, creamy, refined, quiet when you want it to be. But the nicest part is when you want to drive it a little hard, it is more than willing. It really is fun. That surge of torque through the mid-range is just addictive, and it's something you're going to want to keep using, keep on using, because it's just so much fun to ride through. Now that's going to have an impact on your fuel economy. We've been getting about 9-10 kmpl, so don't expect great fuel economy, especially if you're driving these cars hard, and we have. If you let off and drive it a little more aram se, I'm sure it'll give you better fuel economy. These turbo petrols generally are very sensitive to your driving style. So the second you are a little more sensible with your driving, you will see a rise in the fuel economy as well. Other stuff that you should know about on the drivetrain front, you get a start-stop system, which is nice, works well. I think it's better judged on the automatic than on the manual. I remember on the diesel 3XO, every time I'd want to start, if I put into gear too quickly, when I dipped in the clutch, it would just stall the engine and not come on. You have to be very intentional with your input. So dip the clutch, wait for it to crank, then put it into first. With the automatic, there's no such stress. It just, as soon as you're ready to go, it's ready to go. So yeah, the start-stop system works well. And overall, this is a very nice car. I think from the entire 3XO range, diesel manual, diesel AT, AMT, and then the petrols, I think this petrol automatic is the pick of the range. It just does everything really well, and behind the wheel you've got a very sorted car. What I like the most about it is that it does not feel like a compact SUV anymore, you know, in terms of its driving mannerisms. It feels very grown up. It feels like it's taken a leaf out of something like the XUV 700's book. And that's really impressive. The refinement of the driving experience, the NVH, the pace at which it picks up speed, all of that comes together to make this very evolved and very sophisticated. Now, fun fact about the Mahindra 3XO, you can get it with another turbo petrol engine. That's not a TGDI, that's not a direct injection gasoline engine, but it does have a turbocharger on it. Those outputs are slightly less. They're less than the Nexon's outputs as well. But there's a rider, you can only get that smaller engine up to the AX5 variant. Anything above that, AX5L, AX7, AX7L, you're going to get this, the TGDI. Now that's obviously a lot more affordable, but because it's a lower trim level, so you miss out on a lot of equipment like the panoramic sunroof, the leatherette seats, the 360-degree camera, the ADAS, a bunch of fairly useful features, a bunch of features that make this 3XO feel a lot more evolved, make this XUV feel a lot more nice to live with, a lot more special to live with. So yes, if you have the cash, I would highly recommend the turbo petrol with the gasoline direct injection. This is the AX7L trim and it's really nice. Now let's pop over to the Nexon and see what that's like. Okay, now jumping into the Tata Nexon Turbo Petrol DCT. Straight off the bat, one thing is pretty apparent, that performance is not up there with the XUV's level. I mean, we proved this during our drag race. The numbers reveal that as well, you know, 118 bhp, 170 Nm of torque. So in terms of sheer outputs, it's not there, and you feel that. When you're on the go, it doesn't feel as effortless, as sprightly as the XUV 3X. So it's quick. It's not slow by any measure. It's reasonably quick, but it's not punchy. You know, the XUV is proper punchy. It's good. That's how I'd put it. The next one also gets drive modes. You get this little dial over here which controls the drive modes, and thankfully they're sensibly named. So you've got City, Eco and Sport, and
Economy drive mode activated.
This lady comes on every time to tell you you've put Eco drive mode, but thankfully you can turn it off from the screen. So you've got 3 drive modes. Each has different torque and power curves, and that's also very apparent. Eco is very gentle, obviously in the interest of saving fuel. City is a balanced mode, and then
Sport drive mode activated.
you put it in Sport and it gets a little more punchy. You feel the boost come on a little more strongly, and it feels a little closer to the XUV in that sense, you know, in the way the boost comes on, in the way the car just pushes you in your seat. It's a nice feeling in Sport mode, but again, you can expect fuel economy to drop if you keep it in Sport mode and drive it more aggressively. City is reasonably good for most driving situations, but when you're out on the highway and you've got long distances to cover, you want to sit at high speeds, you want the car to feel more effortless, then Sport is the better bet. Another thing that's worth talking about is refinement. The Nexon's refinement is not quite the same as the XUVs. Now both are 3-cylinder engines, but the way the XUV dampens its sound is a lot nicer. Here you can hear a thrum in the cabin, especially when you push the engine a little bit, you can hear it a fair bit. You can also feel it. There's a fair bit of vibrations in the cabin, on the steering wheel, at the floor. So it's not as isolating an experience in terms of NVH in the Nexon. Something that's new for the Nexon for this update is the gearbox. I'm talking not about the palm shifter, that is also new, this new little mechanism, which is very Range Rover inspired, I must say. But mechanism aside, you get a 7-speed DCT doing duty on the Nexon. You can also get it with a 5-speed manual or a 6-speed AMT, but you also get the option of a 7-speed DCT. So Tata's really giving you a whole host of options in the petrol range. The DCT, I must say, works reasonably well. It's quick, it's snappy in terms of upshifts, it's quite quick, so the break-in torque when you're accelerating is not quite so much. When you ask for a downshift, it gives you one, but you've got to be in Sport mode to have the gearbox acting really aggressively and being really on it. In City mode, it prioritizes fuel efficiency more, so you can stand on it and the downshifts don't come as quickly. You really got to stand on it for the downshifts to come. Not a bad thing, because you can go to Sport mode and get it snappier. Something that's really nice is the addition of paddle shifters. Now, the XUV doesn't get paddle shifters, this one does, and I must say I really enjoy them because it just gives you that element of control, particularly when, say, you're exiting a corner and you're in a gear to high. You just tap the left paddle, drop a gear, and you can get better drive out of the corners. For overtakes as well, because the paddles are right here, it's just easier to overtake because you can kick down 2 gears, you can plan your overtake, anticipate it, and then fire it out. So paddle shifters, big thumbs up, really appreciate them. The feel of them, it's okay. I mean, they're not the greatest feeling paddles in the world. They're a little soggy. I'd have liked a little more satisfying click, something more tactile, but they'll do. I'm not going to complain. But you compare drivetrain to drivetrain, XUV to Nexon, and it's very clear that the XUV has the edge, whether it's in terms of performance, whether it's in terms of effortlessness and acceleration, whether it's in terms of NVH, it's in terms of smoothness. The XUV does have the edge. The DCT does claw back a few points over here, particularly the paddle shifters. They just add a little bit of engagement to the driving experience. But overall, purely on the drivetrain, it's going to have to go to the XUV. Okay, now that we've got the engines out of the way, and we're still in the hot seat, I might as well give you a quick refresher on what these cars are like to drive apart from the engine. So ride and handling. And I must say, the XUV 3XO, it is on point. The older XUV 300 was already a great car to drive. Dynamically, it was very sound, good engines, good ride and handling. However, it was ignored because it was fairly dated in terms of its styling, in terms of its interiors, in terms of its features. That has changed. And now, combine all of those things with this good ride and handling, and you really have a strong contender for the segment benchmark. In terms of ride quality, ride over really bad broken patches of road, phenomenally good. What they've done is give it different dampers that soak up the road much better. It is a little softer, but what it does is it allows it to deal with bad patches of road with a lot of composure. Whether it's comfort inside the cabin or even just the noise of the suspension knocking in and bottoming out, it's much better contained and it really feels very grown up. Again, these are all mannerisms you expect from much larger cars, not these compact SUVs, but the XUV 3XO does have them. In terms of handling as well, the steering is a little light, and that's a Mahindra trait that they've got across their cars, even the XUV 700. But in terms of just outright cornering grip and composure, it's very, very good. You've got good grip from the front, you've got a chassis that doesn't want to just understeer the second it sees a corner, and a little more weight and directness from the steering would have been nice just to hook you in and suck you into the handling experience, but it is really, really impressive as it is anyway. And what I like the most is that even at high speeds, you're cruising at 90, 100, 110 kilometers an hour, it feels super stable, it feels super planted, there's no floatiness, there's no wallowiness, there's no kicking and bucking when it goes over small bumps, it just glides over our roads, absorbs everything really well. There's really very little to criticize about this 3XO, but if I had to, one thing is that I wish it had ventilated seats. Honestly, it's hot outside, it's summer. These leatherette seats, they're not very breathable. I'm sweating my butt off, honestly. Cool seats would have been very, very welcome. This thing is very well loaded. I would have liked cool seats as well. Okay, now back to the Nexon, and I'm finally with my cool seats on, a little happier than before because my back's now sweaty from the XUV, but the Nexon is cooling me off a little bit. Let's talk ride and handling of the Nexon. The Nexon has a very high baseline ride and handling ability, and that's again always been true for the Nexon. It's just that when you put it side by side with the XUV, it gets overshadowed just a little bit. The XUV, it has better ride over bad patches of road. So the Nexon, it does feel very robust, and we've always said it's got that DNA which allows you to drive it hard over bad patches of road. But the XUV just feels a little more competent, it's a little more pliant, absorptive, and it sort of soaks up the bumps a little better compared to the Nexon. That said, at high speeds, the Nexon feels really stable, almost as stable as the XUV. There's not much in it in terms of just high speed stability on a good road. What I like about the Nexon is that because it's not so softly sprung, when you brake, the nose dive is not as much. There's a fair bit of dive from the nose of the XUV when you get on the brakes, and you can feel it. It just tosses you forward slightly, and that's because of the soft springs and dampers which compress fairly easily. That's done to give you ride quality, but a side effect of that is going to be that little head toss when you brake. But the Nexon feels far more composed. When you do brake, the front end sort of deals with it a little better. Obviously, weight does shift. That's natural and that's good because it puts weight on the front tires, loads them up and gives you better braking, but it's not to a degree which is uncomfortable in the cabin. As for handling, I've always said the Nexon has had one of the best steerings in its class, and that continues. I prefer this steering, purely the steering, over the XUVs because it does have a little more weight, it does have a little more connection to the front end. Like I said, the XUV is a light steering wheel, and that can get a little unnerving. It just makes you feel a little disconnected from the front end. Outright handling is great, but just that connection to the driving experience, a small link is missing because of that lightness. But in the Nexon, I think it does it really well. You got a good connection to the front. The weight is superb at high speed. It's a bit sharp, at high speed, so small movements can make it weave on the roads. You've got to be really focused. It's not as bad as the Harriers and Safaris from before, but it is a nice, well-judged steering wheel. As for pure handling chops, chuck it into the corner, feels nice, feels composed. You've got a good amount of grip. The wheels are one size down on the XUVs, so outright handling may be a little less, but there's not much in it, honestly. The Nexon is still a very competent handler, still goes around bends very well, and it will put a smile on your face. But again, when you're going around a bend, I think the differentiating factor becomes the engine, because the XUV just has so much more drive out of the corner, and it just feels so much smoother and more aggressive when you want to get out of a corner, and it sort of adds to the thrill on a winding road. Nexon is nice, but you feel the engine straining a little bit. You can hear it. It's not giving you the same amount of shove, so it just feels a little strained getting out of a corner when you're driving it really hard. The XUV feels really nice, feels really competent, and it really is the better mechanical package. There's no doubt about that. On the features front though, the Nexon, it has taken such a big step up from the last one. You've got your new infotainment screen, you've got your digital readouts, you've got a third screen with the Tata logo over here, you've got a phygital AC control pad, tons of features like the cool seats, which I really do appreciate over here on a day like this. You've got your sunroof, not a panoramic sunroof, regular size sunroof, nice seats, and on this variant you've got purple interiors. Now, whether you like that or not, that's entirely up to your aesthetic sense, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot. I don't mind it really, it looks pretty cool. It certainly won't stain like the XUV's white interiors will. But yeah, back to back, there's very little in it, but I think the XUV has the better engine chassis combination. Now let's talk prices. The Nexon, it costs rupees 14.29 lakhs for this top-end DCT trim. But you add the black roof, which this car has, it's rupees 14.79 lakhs. The XUV, on the other hand, is a little more expensive, 15.49 lakhs ex showroom. For your money, you're getting a car with a better engine. It's a little more sprightly in terms of performance, it has better NVH levels, and it has better ride and handling. It's a more grown-up car, if you may, and if I had the money, I would put it on this car. But I must admit, I'm not a fan of the way this looks. That's a much prettier looking car. Come on, Mahindra, this is a winner. What have you done to the face?